Oh, Sally Spillane. Yeah, it's spring. It really, really is. How cool is that? And this is The Garden Show, brought to you by Sunderskill Farm Market and Greenhouse in Accord, New York. Closed for the season, but reopening in April, which is like almost tomorrow. Online, sunderskill.com, and Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery in Tilson, New York, where your landscape is a living investment. For tips, advice, and solutions, visit Masseo Landscape on Facebook. And also, we're going to give you some tips, advice, and solutions right now. Mark Masseo is here. Yeah, it's spring, Mark.
Well, we'll say almost. It still feels like winter's holding on. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, no, it's good that you're here, because we're going to talk about some things that are really, I have a lot of questions about frost damage. I mean, okay, frost. So in some places where the snow is really deep, I guess the ground has been so insulated that there's not a lot of frost.
Correct.
But where the ground wasn't insulated, i.e. your driveway, your walkway, the road you drive on, those were not insulated. And boy, I got to tell you, the roads just took it on the chin this year.
They have, and I'll tell you right now that even though in the last week or so that things warmed up, became a little bit more milder, and you see in the temperatures get warmer, 50s during the day, then creep back down at night, that you're seeing, how true the damage is. Wait another 3 or 4 weeks when you start getting a couple good rains and all the frost is out of the ground, and then you're going to see the true damage of, I think that we're already in the pothole season, but I think it's only going to get worse, even though they've done some patching.
How long is that going to last, though?
I have a feeling this year, even just some of the newly roads that I've seen paved around, that it's not so much a big deal when you have deep frost, which is what we've seen and what you were talking about with no snow cover. We've seen it down. We've done some digging this winter, and I've seen it as deep as 3.5 feet. Yeah. Somebody else I spoke to, they were at 55 inches deep. So I've heard of water lines in municipalities freezing, sewer lines freezing, which is really, I wouldn't say unheard of, but it has to be really cold, or the sewer line has to be real shallow. And that's kind of, it's almost uncommon. But, that to me is right there's an indicator that, this is, our 16th year in business and dealing with outdoor
living,
outdoor living and drainage and landscape and whatever, and you see things. And last winter we saw a lot of what we thought was a lot of frost, and we saw blacktops heave, and we saw curbs heave, and it kind of settled back in place. But this year, because the frost was so deep and so long, some areas have all the frost that's evacuated; it's already gone. But I still think that in the pockets that are on the north side of the houses, places that really truly don't get sun at all, that it'll take a while. And I bet you won't be uncommon to see mid-April until all the frost is out of the ground, and really to start seeing what kind of damage. So your pavements, commonly what we see, and commonly what we see is we're multi different media come together. So when you have a curb line that meets a blacktop, or a street intersection walkway, a concrete walkway, and maybe another media of a gravel walkway or whatever, those of what we've seen are real damage, because they're all different density materials, they're all different thicknesses, they're all different poured at different heights, and they have different substructure. So those that you've seen is the blacktop heave. The heaving's not the problem. What happens is it's heaved so much is that it's actually broken the blacktop.
Yeah.
So that's where you're going to see the damage. And then as that resettles, so if it heaves and it kind of resettles, I could tell you 15, 20 properties that I know where a walkway is going to heave or a blacktop's going to heave, and it's up 2 inches, and it's a trip hazard at that time for 6-8 weeks during the winter, whatever it may be. But for history, I know that it's going to go back. This is the year that I know those landscapes and I know those properties that I really pay special attention to find out how much resettlement are we going to have, or what kind of damage is going to be coming back. And what if now that if there's a failure, or now there's going to be a real problematic area, how are we going to be solve that solution? What is the real solution to that problem?
And it's where the worst places are like where curbing comes into blacktop or curbing comes into gravel, because as you said, that all has a different substructure. It's going to freeze and thaw. And especially like stone. Stone is a little bit of it gets exposed and it just starts thawing immediately. So all that water's got to go somewhere. Same with blacktop. I mean, it starts thawing and
right. And the thing with blacktop is that the surface water, hopefully there's a good pitch on a blacktop, and even with the snow and you have a stockpile of snow, if it melts and it refreezes, if the water has a place to go and it can evacuate and get off the surface, that's fine. The bigger problem that we see is that what's upland, or where is that water getting under the blacktop? That's where the real damage is. Even though
because that's what's freezing,
right? And that's what's getting under the substructure, and then that's what freezes. So those are actually easy fixes. You can identify. It's like, okay, we need to just eliminate this water, a little apron, a little surface drain, a little bit of regrading, whatever the case may be, that will help solve that area of the pavement. The bigger problem is, with road improvements, so a little bit out of, the realm of this conversation is like roadway improvements. And my own road that I live on, I see it, is that they repaved it last year. They ground it up, they put a crown on it, they, ditched out the ditching, they replaced some culverts, and then they repaved it. Well, the pavement they paved is broken. And, part of me is I would have liked to see, the road was compromised to begin with. I much would have rather seen the whole road either widened and put more base material, or I knew they wouldn't remove it because, it was compromised with the subsoil. But that was a problem, is that subsoil and, the material underneath has been compromised with sediment and breakdown and whatever for 30 years, that it holds so much moisture now, and it was inevitable that it was going to fail.
So if also the salt usage this year has been incredible. Mm-hmm. When you get all that salt down mixed with the water that's going under, does that what happens with the salt that goes down there too? Is that a corrosive the road as well?
It is a corrosive, but it's only a matter of time before it'll get diluted with enough, natural rain. But every road or every property is a little bit of its indifferences. My feeling would be, as long as it can get water and it can get evacuate, it can get off there some way. And it has preferably before it gets to a streamway or a waterway, to have a buffer to, naturally clean itself. Anything, even with just straight grass, that it can actually do some uptake, a little bit of uptake to, to slow the saline down a little bit before you get, polluted waterways.
Yeah, boy, and so much salt. So on some of the roads I've been on, I noticed that they heave kind of across the roadway.
And what you're seeing there, that's most likely like a perfect perpendicular cut across the road. What that is there's a culvert under the roadway, whether it's poly or it's steel, whatever the media is. And what happened is that pipe has stayed there, and the whole roadway material is actually heaved. So that dip or that ditch that's across there will resettle out, but it's just that all the area around it has frozen that much more than the media that's on top of the pipe. So
wow. So it just pushes everything up.
Correct.
And a lot of that will resettle.
That'll resettle. But the damage is that it's heaved so much, and anybody will say it. No, when they go over them, they realize that it used to be maybe 2 or 3 inches. Now it's 6-8 inches. I mean, they're actually patching with cold patch to soften the blow, so a car actually won't get a damaged tire or rim or bottom out. But that will actually go back. But it's moved so much, it's actually broken the blacktop. So that's when your damage, the roadway will prematurely wear, and the life cycle gets cut in half.
Man.
So the life cycle, blacktop has roughly a 15 to 20 year life cycle. If it's designed correctly and it's installed correctly, and things are maintained, and it goes through its natural regimen of maintenance, 20-25 years is not uncommon if it's installed correctly. You're going to see that cut in half, with the winter that you had now, And even projects that we did last year, it's a constant watch.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a contact. We get out and we see it. We see the blacktop heaving, and we have a really neat project we did that has permeable pavers as well as, blacktop. And it was the best example that we could do with stormwater management. And we saw the indifference, the item 4 base material that's under the blacktop holds a bit more moisture. And the comment was this: the pavers have settled, and it's the exact opposite. It's because it's the way the mind sees it, is that the pavement, the blacktop, is actually heaved because of the frost. There's no, in a permeable cross section, it's all free draining stone, so there's no fines to hold moisture, and it doesn't have any capability to hold water, so it doesn't heave. Has it moved? Yeah, it's actually resettled back. It's about level. It's not a problem. But your initial thought is this a brand new project? Did we fail it? Did we design this for failure? What is the problem? And it isn't a problem. It's the frost is so deep this year. You designed it correctly. It's the exact correct installation procedure, and it'll go back. And it's just something to be mindful of.
So we just need to wait.
Yes,
we're gonna take a quick break. Because wow, yeah. I mean, I just have seen. Wow, a lot of stuff. Mark Masseo from Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery in Tilson, New York is here. Landscape is a living investment, and you can find them at Masseo Landscape on Facebook. Also, you can find them online and give them a call, because it's time to start calling your people in for the project. Somebody called me to design a garden, and I can't even get anywhere near that garden, but I appreciated the call early. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back. Sally Spillane, welcome back to the Garden Show. Yes, we are going to have gardens. Brought to you by Stories Nursery in Freehold, New York, a gardener's destination for 58 years. They're open year-round. You can visit them at storiesnursery.com. If you want a treat, hit a greenhouse. Adams for Acre Farms, year-round garden center, greenhouse, and super farm market in Kingston, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, and Wappingers. AdamsFarms.com. Get that bump of humidity, green, and warmth. Mark Masseo from Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery in Tilson is here. We're talking about winter damage, all kinds. Now, you were talking earlier about an installation that you did where the blacktop moved up to permeable pavers. Permeable pavers are this really kind of interesting new thing, and I want to know. You said the permeable pavers settled down really nicely. Have you had has it been a good winter for permeable paver?
They have. So we've, permeable pavers have been around for a long time. They've only maybe in the last 8 or 10 years gained popularity because of, people realize the real good benefits of it. You can get a hard surface. You can use it for parking, even walkway, driveway, whatever. And you can use it for a water quality and a water quantity. You can use it as a storage area, and you're treating it right at point source. And it's got the history is showing that it's got a little bit better life cycle than blacktop. And the best benefit of all is that it looks way better.
Yeah.
So the half a dozen permeable pavement that we've put in the last 4 or 5 years have worked phenomenally, especially now. Last year we thought, again, with heavy frost, what do we expect to see? And heave, thaw cycle, they work fine. And then now with a second, a deeper freeze, a longer freeze, more snow cover, and the wind, and, every environmental, plus some rain events in there.
Oh, yeah.
Icing events, they work great. How does it work, or why is it better, or how does it work versus conventional pavers or blacktop? It's the substructure underneath is roughly 2 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a deep reservoir of free draining clean stone. The very bottom is roughly 12, 15 inches of a coarse number 3 stone, like a 2-inch stone. And then after that, you have another 4 inches on top of that of like a 3/4 inch stone. And then you have a bedding sand of like a 1/4 inch chip, another inch on top.
And you roll it all out?
You dump it out, you compact it in sequential lifts, And, the stone itself creates interlock. It's roughly 98 standard Proctor to begin with, and that's what you get it to when you compact it. And then you lay your pavers out. You have edging restraint all the way around it to hold it.
Now, what's an edging restraint? Oh, like a curb.
It's like a curb.
Okay. Or a wall or a short wall or
exactly,
something.
Right.
Okay.
We
Okay,
commonly,
and that keeps it from spreading out and...
Correct. From walking out, spreading out.
Right.
And that's commonly where we'll get a complaint or we'll get a phone call because a system failed. And it wasn't that a system failed. It's just that it wasn't really installed properly. To do the edging restraint or a curbing or a wall like that, it just takes a little bit of planning to make sure it's done correctly and planned out. And commonly people are like, oh, we won't need it. We'll just back topsoil. But the problem is topsoil and plantings just aren't enough with the dead, the stopping traffic, the inertia with a car stopping on a live load.
And not only that, but once again, we're talking about the substructure. I mean, the substructure of the permeable paver is 2 feet deep, and the substructure for the for a garden, as we all know from our gardens, is just, depending on how much water is in there, it's just high or low, or, soil moves.
Right. So they've become more and more of an option, and people are starting to see like it's more of an option and it's more of an answer, and the correct answer. I would much rather. I've cut out more blacktop and put in. I've cut out more blacktop, excavated, and put in, sections or just big long aprons to break up the blacktop or to break up some of the long sheet flow runs that's on blacktop, and a little bit of retrofitting, so to speak, and they work great. And they've helped people in the last couple of years with if you have a driveway that leads right up to the house, and a thunderstorm, if you don't have a good enough grade, the water can pool. It can even, if you have some snow load in the winter that the water can't get out and you have a rain event, is when you'll see the ground's partially frozen and water has no place to go. It'll go into the house. This is a great answer to break up the media between the house as well as the blacktop, and it gives it a place to dump water. And
these are interlocking. They have little keys.
They're interlocking. They have a larger space bar, and that's what makes them permeable, is actually the joint space in between it. And in between that joint space, there's no sand or no polymeric sand. There's nothing. Everything's free. You put in 1/4-inch chip, a real small stone, and actually that's what's allowed the water to
filter down to the substructure.
Correct. So the maintenance on that, what is the maintenance versus blacktop versus permeable pavers? A good cleaning of the debris. So if you cut your grass and you get grass clippings on it, you just want to, blow it off with a leaf blower or remove it so the pore space doesn't get plugged up. We have a small parking area on the backside of my office. Our township, they use a salted sand. And the last 3 feet of my permeable driveway, we got to clean it out, blow it out, just because it'll plug up that part of it. It's still rendered effectively the 97% of the other area, but that's what we see commonly, the wrong material used. So sometimes people use permeable pavers in a heavy sediment area, and they'll just gum up. Everything else underneath it is fine. You can use a power washer or a surface scrubber, or a big large area. It's a vacuum truck that actually will suck some of the top joint material out and then reapply it. The maintenance of it is that a vacuum truck is very expensive versus just like a sweeping truck. So it's just important to, in your weekly regimen of maintenance, to keep up on some of the leaf litter.
Yeah, just get there with your leaf blower.
Yeah, right. And it'll take care of a good majority of the problem.
Wow. And the ones you use are made, actually, they're local. They're made in Gardner.
We use a lot of Rosetta Hardscape, was actually manufactured in Gardner, New York. They have an Old Mission paver. We've used it on 6-7 projects this past year. We've used Aqua Brick by Cambridge. We've used CST's. They have a permeable paver, Roman Cobble Green, which is a nice product. Teco Block has a nice product. They're all nice products, and they're all designed the same exact premise, joint space, the same exact install. The only thing that may be indifferent is that the way or where you install it is that you may need like an exit drain. So, if your water table reaches, if you have a high water table and you need to eventually remove that water. Yeah, you got
that 2 feet. You want that water that's going down into the substructure to move out of there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So eventually it just needs to, the water can go down and it can sit there. It's just that you don't want the water to fill up.
Exactly, and float.
Right. So you put in, some sort of exit drain, and that's site specific depending upon your soil.
And what I kind of am liking about this 2-foot substructure is that it's really kind of filtering the water as it comes down.
Correct.
So it's not like blacktop where it's just washing off into the whatever landscape there is around it, but this is actually going down and getting filtered as it goes down.
Right. This is a perfect example of, treating point source, and it's a good option. It's a real good option now, where before it was an expensive, very expensive.
Yeah.
Not many people could really afford it or get it into where it's needed. It's getting more more cost effective because people are designing when using their project. I mean, it could even be for a home, but even like their businesses, they're using it in conjunction. It's a cost of a paved area, parking space. Plus, they're also using it in part of the stormwater mitigation.
Yeah.
So,
no, and it looks great too. I mean, in the last couple, 3-4 years, the color of the permeable pavers has gotten better.
Yeah, the hardscape industry as a whole has better technology. We're essentially, we follow Europe. And Europe has had this technology 30 years ago. And now that, one manufacturer got it 6-8 years ago, then another one follows suit, and so on. And so now you have pavers that were just, little bricks that, now they have colors, they have different textures and finishes. And now with the permeable world, same thing. They're getting pavers that mimic or replicate more natural stone, larger scale pieces. They're vehicular acceptable, H20 loading. So there's not a need, the concern of, well, I have an oil truck delivery, or I have, a heavy truck, I have a septic truck. If it's installed correctly with the correct, sub base, all of those issues are really they're non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, if you're curious about this, check out. Do you have this catalog on your website?
Yeah, if you go to MasseoLandscape.com,
you can look at it and see, because there's all kinds of there's stairs, there's there are blocks, there are outcropping. One's called outcropping.
Yeah, so outcropping. So they have a retaining. They have a paver. They have a
they've got
irregular paver, a dimensional paver that replicates a bluestone look. They have outcropping that is a large scale retaining wall for, and it looks like boulders, and it's engineered. We've used that exclusively on our bigger projects that need a large retaining wall. They have a belvedere wall that is a small, that you would call like a landscape block, that you can build freestanding structures. So your seating walls, your pillars, fire pits, and your kitchens and whatever, something freestanding. We've built the couches with it, a lounge area.
Oh, cool.
And it's they're a great product. And
Cool.
then now they also have the permeable pavers. So for us, we can't get a better example of a local product, for local people, and has all the answers for them.
Right. It's engineered to fit.
Yes.
We're going to take a break again. Can you believe how fast this is going? And I bet it melts fast because it's stone and it gets the heat and it melts. I love watching this all melt. Mark Masseo from Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery in Tilson is here. Masseo Landscape on Facebook or MasseoLandscape.com. But check out these stones. You'll be the pavers and the hardscape. It's pretty amazing what's happening. Okay, we're gonna take our break, and we are then going to come back. See if you can stop us. Sally Spillane, welcome back to the Garden Show. GARDEN. It's spring. May not look exactly like spring, but the days are longer, sun is shining, sky is blue, birds are singing. So start thinking about this. Brought to you by Sanderskill Farm Market and Greenhouse in Accord, New York. Closed for the season, reopening in April. Visit them online at sanderskill.com. And Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery in Tilson, New York, where your landscape is a living investment. Tips, advice, solutions. Visit Masseo Landscape on Facebook. And Mark Masseo is here. We've been talking about all kinds of things. And now we're going to talk about drainage, because now we are dealing with the thaw. So,
Well, drainage has been certainly the key for problematic areas, and I've almost felt like watch me I'll jinx myself as soon as this is, but I feel like we're outside of the terrible flood that we may always seem to get come springtime, because right now is the perfect time for the storm. You have partially frozen ground. Most of the snow load is gone, but you still have some snow banks.
maybe
you
at
have
your house.
Right, yeah. And you have potential warming weather with rains. And now is like the perfect time to take a little bit of time, go out, try to find your footing drains, make sure your gutter drains, your leader drains are not frozen solid or plugged up, or there's no debris that that have moved in even to some late leaves or debris, sticks that have fallen because of a lot of the wind recently.
Or also, if you're like me, one of my big issues right now is that I like many, had some ice dams in my gutters. And so I have like gutters, places where my gutters dipped down, so it's not going to drain.
Right. So, now it's time to be a little bit proactive.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult to get your gutters replaced, in end of March, but it's something to get people out there, planning for, and take good, if you could take some good pictures or some good mental notes. So if you're going to do some improvements to the property, even just if it's simple grading to, shape the grade for the water to get away a little bit further, or if you have drain systems that were installed that either have, the surface has been plugged up, or that the biggest thing is with the frost and how deep we've had a frost is that, when you have water that exits, that the end pipe, that end frost, that water will freeze.
Yeah.
And then subsequently it'll keep freezing. All of a sudden you'll have a pipe that's froze solid. So the best way to deal with that is at the end of the pipe, if you can put some clean stone so it can, not have a blockage, or really keep it insulated well with a lot of earth around it. That also seems to help. Some extreme cases, I'm not recommending it, but I've seen it because it's the need. Is sometimes you'll just need to have a piece of heat tape, electrical, to keep the area drained. And we have a property that we maintain habitually. I could tell you the day that it's just going to freeze up because it's surrounded by blacktop.
Yeah.
It's wide open, prevailing winds from the northwest. Doesn't get a lot of sun on the north side of the house. Heavy snow load, just the way the natural wind is. And they do have a heat system, but the gutters, freeze solid right away. The heat system can't quite keep up with, the amount of snowfall. And we've seen it not fail, it just can't keep up. So we've actually had to get up, shovel the roof a couple times,
Yeah.
and then let the system naturally work. And it creates it's a piped, system underground. So it needs to make sure that the water's flowing.
It can go somewhere.
It can go somewhere, and it doesn't become a surface issue where it's a trip and fall hazard.
Yeah. And not only that, but boy, when it starts freezing this time of year, it'll thaw a little bit during the day and then freeze up again at night, and then freeze, thaw, freeze, thaw, freeze, thaw. And if there's any plantings anywhere near something like that, just good luck with that. So get out, look at your drains. Consider, if it's open and not too muddy, because boy, this is the time of year when I just feel like I need to tell everybody. This isn't going to happen in my house for a really long time, but it may happen at your house. You may think that it's a good time to get into a garden and clean it out, but you do not want to get in there and compress the soil by standing on it. So just sort of let it dry out a little.
Being patient. As much as I hate this gray, muddy season, it really is too early to, start working the soil.
Yeah, and plus we just want as much of this water to go down. We want all this moisture in the ground, So
and so far it's been great how it's been slowly warming.
Yeah, slow thaw. It's been good.
Where opposed to where it just skyrockets. You hit 55, 60. And that the soil can't absorb that water, and it doesn't get that the water tables reestablished where they should be. So
let it go. Just let it go slowly. Be patient. If you have to go near a garden, don't go in a garden.
We're starting some of our pruning that we've seen some or midwinter pruning that we didn't quite get to.
Oh
'cause
yeah,
it was
tell me why.
So darn cold, too difficult to get to with the snow.
And then there was ice. Trying to set a ladder.
Right. So we're just starting to get out there now to do a little bit of that, and we've seen a little bit of we've seen a lot of nasty deer browsing, but that was kind of inevitable.
Yeah.
But a lot of wind damage because of even just the last week we had a lot of wind.
Yeah.
And the ice damage is really starting to show some signs, some frost cracks on some species we've seen.
So frost cracks, I want to talk about that for just a second.
Sure.
Those are on the bark facing south mostly.
Correct.
Because it's a freeze thaw, and it pops the bark.
Correct. And we actually have I have like a landscape that I know inside now. Actually, most of our landscapes are that way. But there's certain landscapes, you just take a minute to maintain. And there's a tree that's a little leaf linden on a Main Street property we maintain. And that's my indicator. And if it splits open again, that we know we're in trouble or we've had whatever, because it happened about 5 years ago. Terrible, nasty frost crack. And it created a frost crack in a tree, and the bark scar was probably 3.5 inches wide.
Wow.
And it was probably a 5.5, 6 inch caliper, tree at the time. And I thought for sure it was going to kill it. But this past summer, it has healed up almost 90% of, it was a very small little gap there. And which is I was happy to see because the plant has, it's gone through some compartmentalization. It's done some healing. It hasn't shown any, shoot issues that it hasn't been able to foliate correctly. And then you have a winter like this.
So now, with a tree like that, do you in the fall wrap it or anything?
We don't typically do anything.
It's gonna make it or it's not.
Correct. I hate to sound like that. You just a little tough love. But the reality is that this tree, where it is on this property, that if we were to wrap this tree and if we were to do some sort of even if we just hung some burlap on it to shade it a little bit from the southern, from that sun exposure. I'm sure my office would be inundated with phone calls. What's going on? What are they doing?
I know. Plus, I think you have to be really careful when you do that because you're really inviting moles and voles.
Correct. And this property, because there's a lot of traffic and a youth involved, I don't even think it would make it through the night. I mean, it's just a matter of, something for the kids to grab a hold of, make a mess, pick it up on another piece of the property.
Yeah.
And if it's a residential and it's your backyard, absolutely. I would say, a little bit of, a pound of cure or, ounce of cure is worth that pound of prevention. I would say certainly, try something. We've done a lot of wrapping, in general for deer and more so wind. We've done more wind wrapping on plantings in the last couple of years because we've seen the damage and we see how long last year spring was 5-6 weeks late. And it took so long for plants to bounce back and grow out of that damage, yet alone to produce, new green material, new growth. And we're just trying to help buffer that a little bit.
Okay, so here's my question. What do you think is going to happen this year? We're going to be late?
I think we're going to be a little late.
But not as late as last year?
I don't think late as last year. Our snow cover is gone, even though they're calling for more snow.
Your snow cover is gone.
Yeah, we still have some. Snowbanks are still there. Some things are insulated, but I think you're going to have. I still think you're going to see a lot of damage much later in the year.
Yeah.
I think like last year, ornamental grasses were so late. The budley was so late.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see similar effects of the damage of late. The flowering is going to be a lot less. I mean, that's just classic to our northeast harsh environment with winds and not snow cover when we needed it, and now it's so much snow cover.
Now, was this the windiest winter you can remember in a long time? I just feel like there was so much. I mean, maybe just because it was so cold and the wind felt so much worse. But
right, I would agree with the second statement. I would say that I think it's the most windiest we've had with the cold.
Yeah.
I think there's other windy years we've had.
Yeah. Oh
but,
my gosh.
Yeah, this was cold. I mean, the reports are all out. February was the coldest February they've had in the Hudson Valley in 30 some odd years, and that's certainly going to show environmentally. I mean, how much? I mean, I'm always curious when things change or there's some upland development of a property or there's they put an addition on a house, and you see the sunlight requirements change, and you see that Colorado blue spruce that was getting that, full sun nonstop, and slowly you start seeing some needle cast come in and some die out because just a little environmental change. I like watching that and see how it's going to develop and how things are going to change, or how you can help the plants, or help the landscape as a whole, mitigate itself to kind of keep living and thriving.
It's another year where, think twice before you buy something from Zone 6. We're definitely Zone 5 or less. It's just amazing. We're going to take a quick break. Mark Masseo from Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery is here. They're in Tilson. Is the nursery open?
Not yet. Soon.
Yeah, not yet, but soon. And you can check them out at MasseoLandscape.com, or you can check them out at Masseo Landscape on Facebook. And check out the pavers. It's a really great idea to just deal with some of these issues that we've been talking about. I like the fact that there's just all different kinds, and they're engineered, so you can actually maybe sort of, with a little bit of help, do it yourself. Okay, we're breaking. We'll be back. Sally Spillane, welcome back to the Garden Show, brought to you by Adams Fairacre Farms, year-round garden center, greenhouse, and super farm market in Kingston, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, and Wappingers, adamsfarms.com, and Stories Nursery in Freehold, New York, gardener's destination for 58 years, open year-round, and you can visit them at storiesnursery.com. Mark Masseo from Masseo Landscape and Calico Nursery in Tilson is here. Like so many people who do landscape, you're out all winter long plowing and watching, taking care of your jobs. And I think you mentioned that earlier, that deer damage. So as soon as you can get out and spray for deer, you should, because it's just going to get worse, right?
I would agree with that. And I was actually speaking to somebody from the DEC saying that like April and May are their more stressful months, the deer. And they're just as stressed as, people going through the time change or environmental change. And I was actually curious to hear what they had to say, because I always assumed that the winter was the harshest for them, or the most difficult time of year. And it was, I guess the answer, if I remember hearing it correctly, was that their food source isn't fully there yet. And with a late spring arrival, it's even more so.
Yeah.
So part of it, you have 2 feet of snow cover. They can't get to a lot of the foliage. Can't get what they would, typically forage on. So it's whatever salad bar is above 2 feet.
Right. Just there's a lot of self pruning going on out there. Frost heave for plants as things melt, and the snow cover was great for perennials and small shrubs. It really was just super. But if you did some late fall planting, as soon as that ground opens up again, and it's, until it's really stops freezing pretty much at night, you run the risk of frost heave for new plantings.
We actually, last year had a very heavy fall planting season, just because of, summer was a little rough on everybody. It was, dry. And we held off on plantings. So yes, we did a lot of fall plantings. I couldn't agree with you more that we see a lot of frost heaving, plants, getting pushed out of the ground. It's not uncommon with like a 2 or 3 gallon shrub, that sometimes you'll see it crown out of the ground 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And once the soil is relatively, all frost free and it's not too early and you're in good temperatures, we have no problem just kind of healing that plant back into place, a good mulch cover, maybe a fertilizer if it needs it or calls for it. We use an organic liquid grade of Holganics. We used it last year and the year before that, and it showed really good success with, a new planting coming into the spring, and we'll probably continue that regimen. And the biggest thing is people that want to jump in a garden way too fast.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm one of them. I mean, there's
Yeah, yeah.
there's nobody more in this room besides you and I wants spring to come, like, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So once, the soil is, firmed up and it's not, saturated, get in there before you do more damage. And then, a little bit of a weeding or whatever, aeration in the bed, and then a little bit of mulch cover, to keep that weed suppression down is always good. So that's commonly what we've seen. Very rarely and frequently will we see when we do like a larger tree caliper planting in like a grass area, will we ever really see that heave. It's not common.
It's too heavy.
I don't know if it's too heavy. It most likely is, but we've been really smart about planting the right tree in the right place,
yeah.
and just being smart about it.
Backfilling
and
really well.
The soil, it was many years ago, and to be quite honest, it was probably when I was like, my earliest years, that I didn't recognize it right away of the frost heave. And I came back to a planting like 2 years later. I just got called back to the property like 2 years later, and a tree heaved out of the ground, and it actually got a little bit crooked because it was in such a heavier soil. It literally was just like a buoyant, bobber floating in there until it, the water evacuated. And to this day, I drive past this landscape and I see 2 Norway spruces that were perfect, high and dry up on the property, look great. And then there's 2 that are just a little bit lower in that heavier soil. One's a little crooked and they're thinner, spindly. They're just not,
Yeah.
And it was a perfect example of, really could have used a little bit of soil amendment. Could use that little help push to, transplant a little bit better. And now you have one that's crooked.
Yeah.
So,
but I always feel like when I'm planting things, I like to sort of amend. I like to dig my hole, get it really wet, and then I like to take the soil that I dug out and amend it and put it in, so that so that you can create some kind of a I don't know even how to describe it. So you have the soil that the plant.
You want a
was
media
in.
that the plant can live and survive, and also
it will grow out
of and get into the native soil.
Yeah.
The biggest failure that we see is, commonly people just want to dump peat moss into a clay soil. Could you ask for?
No, you just made a bog.
Right. You just made the teacup or the bathtub effect, and it's not uncommon. Like people think, it'll grow great for 2 years and then it peters out, it dies, it gets choked, encircling roots.
Or also, I think the converse of that is that so many big box store plants are from places like with clay soil, like Georgia or something, and you get these plants and you dig a hole in your nice clean dirt and you plant this clay ball in there, and it just never grows together.
Yeah, and that's difficult to. It's first of all, most thing is difficult to identify. If you're a newer gardener or not understanding that, and it's really not such a big deal to fix. You just kind of find out what side of the street you're on to get there, and amend the soil accordingly. And then the biggest thing we'll do is that if it's a soil that's been depleted or that's been not really it doesn't have the life cycle of nutrients, getting a true nutrient cycle, that will just help. Along with a fertilizer supplement until the plant is really established.
Yeah. So it got cold pretty quickly this winter. So there probably was, for new plantings, things planted in the fall, not a whole lot of root growth anyway.
I would say I would agree with you in that. And I think that, the plants are dormant relatively quickly. And I think majority of them, they'll be fine. The plants that even like last spring, we did a planting along a street side, they're totally dead. I watched them just slowly desiccate, just dry out. Then a combination of, it was a roadside, a main highway, salt desiccation, and it was a place where you couldn't get snow cover on it, so they just severely dried out, and then the crosswinds. Leaves are all, curled out. The stomas are just, you can tell the whole tree, all the plants are the leaves are curled, and it's an unfortunate, and that's like a perfect example of like, well, what could have you done to prevent this? I'm like, well, do you really want some screening, or did you want this? Was it the wrong plant for the wrong place? Yeah. In this instance, it was actually a plan that was done by, it was actually approved by a planting board, and that was the plants that had to be planted. I disagreed with the plants, and I still do, but we
No,
did.
duh.
Yeah, right. And we, unfortunately, this may be the year that we should be going back and say, look, we tried it your way twice.
Yeah.
The previous contractor installed it. Now we are listening to you doing it, and it didn't work. Here's our substitutions. Can you listen to us now?
Yeah. I mean, there are, one of the things I've really come to love are cutback shrubs, because they can take a big bad snow load.
Sure.
And then it all melts and there's just nothing there. And then in 2 months you have this giant screen of this cutback plant.
Sure. And the biggest thing that, we'll use for the answer for a lot of these, properties and the deer resistant, tough soils is spirea.
Yeah. And Vitex.
Yeah. And, Vitex for us, we can't use it.
Right. No.
It just won't make it. We have too much winds,
Yeah.
Unless it's protected. And then, without a doubt, Vitex, you can cut that thing off of the ground and have an 8-foot plant by August. Spireas are a little bit more manageable.
Yeah.
They're smaller. I mean, and now they have so many good varieties to choose from.
I love spireas.
And it's not uncommon that
Oh, look, we're talking about spirea.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it's not uncommon that we'll do a complete landscape with boxwoods, ornamental grass, and spirea.
Yeah.
And it's the answer for the the real low maintenance landscape that people want that answer to. And people don't realize that how many varieties of spireas there are, and within a landscape we'll have 5 or 6 different ones, and they can't
all sizes. There's the little moundy ones. There's the big hedgy ones.
Right. You have between the bridal wreath, the old
I
fashion.
like that.
And then you have, snow mound, which is a real small, tight, long, profuse grower. And then you have, a little bit more of the commercially acceptable, the Anthony Waterers. And then you have Gold Flame, Gold Mound, Magic Carpet, Neon Flash. There's a whole bunch to just choose from in that area.
Okay, we're going to run out of time. Are you excited? When do you start getting nursery material in?
Soon, probably within the next week or so, we'll start getting, things are getting cleaned out, and we started getting in some greenhouses and or some cold frames, holding houses to look at some stuff. So, but we still have a good 1.5 feet of snow in our holding area. So it's still a little bit of time. Probably another week, probably 2 weeks, we'll be getting some stuff in.
That'll be exciting.
Oh yeah, can't wait for nice stuff to come out of the house and get your hands on some trees and shrubs again.
Okay, but until then, get out. Just look for resettlement. If you're panicked, maybe just give it a little while and see what will resettle. If your blacktop is broken, it's broken. Nothing's going to make that any better. You're going to have to fix that. Think about permeable pavers, which will take up so much water. Get out and check out your clogged drains, your frozen drains, your gutters. Just look where the water's going, see where your problems are, get out and, we didn't talk about, give me one quick answer for plants that have had too much salt over the winter. Just flood them with water when the time comes.
The recommendation is clear away all the debris around it, the mulch, try to get that media, that loose material off top, good watering, and then another compost layer, mulch layer, whatever you use.
Fertilize?
Yeah, if you could, very lightly.
Lightly.
They've got enough salt.
Yeah,
Right.
It'll last them forever. Okay, so be careful, have fun. Mark Masseo, thank you so much. Masseo Landscape, Calico Nursery in Tilson, New York. And on Facebook at MasseoLandscape.com. If you want to see some really cool pavers, go to Masseo.com. We're out of here. It's spring.